If you'd asked me 5 years ago which truck I would buy, without thinking twice, I would have said this truck right here, the Toyota Tundra. Not this one specifically, it would have been, you know, the second generation Tundra. But now I'm not so sure if I would buy this truck. It is getting better, but that brings up a point. Which Toyotas are actually worth buying and which ones have sort of slipped in quality? But here's the surprising part, really. I think they actually still build some of the most reliable vehicles on the road. The trick is knowing which ones to look at and which ones not to look at. So we're gonna go through the negatives first and then the positives. I know some people would prefer to just hear all the good up front, but so the first thing that I see a lot of complaints on, especially with the new 4Runner here, actually really like the design of these 4Runners, is the brakes. The brakes squeak in these things like crazy.
The brakes squeal.
And that was an issue on the Tundra as well. You see a lot of complaints about brake squeaking and really not much of a solution coming out from Toyota yet. So we'll see what they say on that. The Tundras and the other vehicles, they kind of just band-aid it with new brakes and keep cycling people through the service lane. Let's hope they fix that in these. Now, I also see another complaint about exploding sunroofs on these. So the 4Runners and even a lot of the Tundras, I still see this, even like 25, 26 Tundras, people complaining about the moonroofs exploding while they're driving down the road. Obviously, it's not all of them, but there is a fair amount of complaints on this. And I've seen that in manufacturers like Nissan with the Rogue, and it's just something you don't normally see in Toyota. So it does feel like the quality is a little bit down from what we might expect from them, but that's kind of why we're doing this video. Another thing here is the paint quality. Now my daughter, this is not a Camry, but my daughter has a 2025 Camry, and a big complaint is that chips and things on the front, they say the paint is just super thin on these and you can't really tell when they're new. But I have seen this on my daughter's Camry where we're starting to form little chips all over, and she only has about 20,000 miles. Now on her vehicle with 20,000 miles, it sort of looks like it has about 50 or 60,000 miles just with the number of chips on it. You might be able to mitigate that if you've got maybe a color that is more like a tri-coat or a pearl white that has multiple layers on it. You may end up with a little bit thicker paint coat. That's just kind of what we're looking at here in 2026. Cheaper paint, cheaper plastics. It's kind of across the board with all of these manufacturers. Now, another thing I see just when I look at these vehicles and complaints from others is just the cheap plastic everywhere. So if you look on like my Ram or something, you've got metal or steel bumpers here. This is all just plastic. A lot of the plastics are just very cheap. Another issue that you do see in a lot of the lower trims, you'll see this isn't the lower trim, so the seats are going to be a lot more comfortable on this. But when you're looking at something like an SR5, a lower trim in say the Tacoma, when I drive the Tacoma, I can feel that bolstering in the seat just feels super weak. If you upgrade to Softex or one of the higher trims, it gets a little bit better. My daughter's Camry is the same way. So when you look at these other vehicles like the RAV4s, but when you get down into that lower trim level, it's super thin. They've removed the power seats on the Toyota Camry. The 2025 Camry doesn't even have a power seat for the driver. Just stuff like that. You start seeing these subtle cost-cutting things that Toyota didn't used to do. Not the end of the world, not reliability problems, but it is worth pointing out. Now we're looking at a Tundra here, but if you're looking at a Tacoma, you'd see the same thing, unfortunately, even on some of their TRD off-road trims. You don't even get metal skid plates underneath. It's kind of a bummer. And this is more like a cardboard felt under here. You know, when you're paying $60,000 to $80,000 for these trucks, I kind of think a steel skid plate wouldn't be that hard to put on for that price. Another issue I see on the Tundras, I don't know if this is really the issue on the Tacoma because they only have a 4-cylinder in there, but you'll see the intercooler there. You can see it peeking through. All of that is very exposed. This gap here, large rocks can get through there. And I've seen guys in the forums and other areas in the Facebook groups, they'll get a rock that flies through here and hits that intercooler, and then you're losing coolant. It's a bad day when you lose coolant in intercoolers with a twin turbo engine. Usually you're gonna be stranded. I still see the radio knob, and on the driver's side door, right on the edge of the seat, the plastic still is breaking on these seats. People are actually ordering third-party Amazon parts for these seats. if they have repetitive braking, they just get third-party aftermarket parts that are actually better than the manufacturer right now. So it's just not like Toyota of old to be doing stuff like that. Also worth noting, you see all these Tundras here on this lot. So we've got this entire row here and they extend out over here. They actually seem like they're not selling as well right now. The sales numbers are about the same as 2025. They're still selling good by kind of Tundra standards, but you can see that they are slowing down with sales. I think General Motors problems actually helped boost Toyota sales again, because Toyota does seem to be getting a handle on their engine issues. Now let's jump into the engine issues with this right now. Now we've got 2026s on the lot here. There's only been at least one failure that I know of on the 2026s. So I think that it's very possible Toyota has finally figured out the issue with these engines. Of course, time will tell. I wouldn't risk my wallet on it. If you're gonna buy one of these Toyotas, I would lease a Tundra. I would not buy one yet. That's just my opinion. One thing I do like about the Tundra engine, if they have their issues figured out, this engine produces a ton of low-end torque, which obviously could be why they were having main bearing issues, but it does have a very good design for towing. So if you're looking for a good towing engine, something like this, or the 3.5 EcoBoost in the Fords, or the Ram Hurricane is a very good towing engine. Now let's talk about what I like in all of the Toyotas, and this is really across the board. So let's start out with the 4Runner, the Tacoma, the Camry, pretty much all of their variants. So this is a 4-cylinder turbo, and they don't have wet oil pump belts. So one of the biggest things that Toyota does, they still use steel chains on their oil pump belts, which Ford and other manufacturers are starting to go to those wet oil pump belts, Kevlar oil pump belts. So at least Toyota's not doing that. They have not had any problems really comparatively to how many vehicles they sell. They've had really good luck with the 4Runner and the Tacoma as far as reliability so far. And we're looking at, this is the new RAV4. Their hybrid systems have done very well. They're extremely reliable. They use reliable batteries. They have good warranties on their hybrids. Obviously, it's very tough to get a hold of one of these new RAV4s that you see in front of me here. That one's sold, and that's true. These are truly sold vehicles. The RAV4, if you're paying attention, has been selling like hotcakes, and it's because it is a very small, compact form factor. It's almost like a sedan with all-wheel drive, and it gets 40 to 50 miles per gallon in that platform. So they're hybrid platforms, and this and the Camry are absolutely excellent for fuel mileage. And hey, with today's fuel prices, I mean, that's why they're selling so well, because they have the reliability, the resale value, they have pretty good lease deals, and an excellent powertrain, at least in this hybrid model here with the RAV4 and the Camry. I was just walking by this TRD Pro here, and it did remind me of something else that I do like. Manufactured in Japan. That's the final assembly point. So I have heard that, you know, at least in the scenario with the 4Runner compared to the Tacoma and the Tundra, which are built in the United States and Mexico, these 4Runners are still built in Japan, and the materials and just the fit and finish on these seems to be a little bit better. Now this is a TRD Pro iForce Max hybrid setup. This is coming in at $74,000. Would I pay that for a TRD Pro 4Runner? No, I don't think it's worth it, but that thing will probably hold value better than just about any other mid-sized SUV. Same goes for pretty much every trim here. All of these 4Runners are going to be Japan built. Now, the one downside to the most recent 4Runner is that, you know, they really don't have a base model that's super cheap. It's just, you know, that's the state of the market. Looks like that one is sold. They are still selling like hotcakes, and that's another thing. Toyota just released their sales numbers. When you compare Toyota to other brands, there have been a lot of reported problems with things like the brakes and the moonroofs and things blowing, and even the Tundras. But Toyota has been selling a lot more vehicles. For instance, the Tacoma, for how few problems it's had, they've sold more Tacomas than any other truck has on the market. So it's a very high volume seller. So to not have a bunch of engine problems in the Tacoma, that's actually a really positive thing for Toyota because that's always been traditionally their best seller. And here we go. Look at how many Tacomas they have on this lot. You know, it's their #1 seller and they just pack lots full. And look at that. They've got the new WaveMaker color in this Tacoma. Wow, look at that. That is bright. Holy cow. I don't know if this is really gonna come out on the camera, but this is a TRD Pro. Whew. That is some serious color. It kind of looks different in my viewfinder than it does in person, but this is coming in at $69,000 for that. So the bigger question is, would you pay $69,000 for a Tacoma TRD Pro? I mean, it's a nice looking truck. Is it worth that much money? Probably not for the midsize. And that's really another problem with the entire market, is just the price point of everything. And Toyota has definitely raised their prices up to the point where it's just getting a little out of reach for everybody. And that's why leases are so popular. These dealers know that leases are popular and that people are struggling and they can't afford payments on a lot of these vehicles. And that's why I'm starting to see this a lot more. Lease for $280 a month, $39.99 down. This is going to become more common as Americans get stretched for cash and they get more negative equity. Leases are going to become really the only way they can afford these vehicles, unfortunately. Let's see another one here. They're doing the same thing with this silver one. Lease for less. Same one with this dark gray, lease for less. And a white one over here, same thing. So they're definitely pushing that lease narrative. And the Toyota Sequoia is really the same story as the Tundra. I would stay away from them, or I would lease them. I wouldn't want to buy something like this just given the cost of repair out of warranty. If the engine goes out, it's the same engine in this as the Tundra. Just not worth it to me. One interesting note is the Landcruiser actually is way down in sales this year. I believe they're down 40%, but their prices really aren't reflecting that. So I think the Landcruiser is just going to remain their niche market, and they're okay with selling fewer Landcruisers. There was a big push for them in the first couple of years, and now that demand has dwindled a little bit, I believe. So I figured I would give you my recommendations on if I would lease or buy a Tacoma. I would actually consider leasing or buying the Tacoma. Now, it's only been out 2 years. 2025 was really the first year this hit, but we're not seeing widespread problems with these. Another thing I like is the ASIN transmissions. Toyota has always traditionally had very reliable transmissions, and whether it's the Tacoma's transmission or the Tundra down here or the 4Runner, their transmissions have just been overall reliable compared to other brands. When you compare it to General Motors and even some Fords, I would trust a Toyota ASIN transmission over just about any other brand at this point, other than maybe ZF. Lease or buy on the Tacoma side, I think you'd be safe doing either, at least based on the data we have at this point. Same thing goes for the 4Runner. I think a lease or a buy on the 4Runner is probably just fine. They're gonna hold value like crazy. The Tacomas should hold value pretty well compared to other brands, and you're going to get a pretty decently reliable vehicle. So that's another thing when people talk about Toyotas and the resale value being higher on them. Well, the resale value is really higher usually because the starting price is a little bit higher and they don't have as much wiggle room on the price. So you might spend more up front for the Toyota and then it's worth more down the road, but other brands are kind of the opposite of that, where you might get an exceptional deal from Ram or another brand right now, but you're not going to get that same exceptional deal here at Toyota, but the Ram's going to be worth less down the road. So it's kind of a trade-off. Usually the ratios are pretty similar. And as I mentioned before, the Tundra, boy, it's a tough sell for me just because of the cost of the engine replacement. Now, if you're just gonna buy this and get rid of it after about 60,000 miles and you're not gonna keep this through warranty, I would still recommend it's probably going to get you down the road. Looking at the numbers, I've been looking at the NHTSA data and the forum data. You don't see a bunch of 2026s dropping. We've had 26 reports on NHTSA, that's the NHTSA, 26 reports of engine failures on 2025s, and then the 2024s are obviously a higher number. But as of now, it's starting to feel like Toyota has their issues figured out with this Tundra engine. So overall, I still like Toyota as a brand. I like that they're still using the chain-driven oil pump systems. I think their engine designs are, other than the Tundra and the blunder they had with this, I still think their engine designs and their powertrains are generally a little bit more reliable than other brands, at least long term. Their design has been pretty good. They're gonna go through some growing pains with this new platform, whether it's the 4Runner, the Tacoma, the Tundra, the RAV4. I would be concerned if you're looking at even the RAV4. First model year of this hybrid, they've been testing that out in the Camry and they've had decent luck with it, but my daughter's 2025 Camry was the first year for that. And you know, she's had some growing pains with that car. It's got up 4 or 5 recalls. Anytime it's a model year change, you're gonna have issues even with Toyota. So just expect that. If you guys are interested in any of the cars or trucks that you see here, we are currently at Stapp Interstate Toyota. And when you look here, they've got all these up here just to protect from hail. We get a ton of hail throughout these summer months, and it tends to destroy probably millions of dollars worth of vehicles at this point with the cost of these vehicles. Now, before we leave and walk away from this girly blue WaveMaker, take one last look at the lot here. I just wanted to show you, you can kind of see all the plastics and things that Toyota has gone to, and really the almost car-like look of many of these Toyotas. You see that spoiler there. A lot of people just remove that from these, and you know, that's all just kind of EPA trying to struggle to get that extra little bit of mileage out of them. I'm going to show you my Ram and just kind of show you the design elements and how even Ram didn't go cheap on a lot of things. I think they're providing a lot of value for what they are, but they're Ram and they will depreciate more than something like Toyota. As I was walking by, I believe this is one of the service guys or the people that work at the dealership. The service guys kind of know what to buy. This one as well, another second gen Tundra. You'll see a lot of the people that work at these Toyota dealerships. It's funny, they all own the kind of what we would say would be the old reliable versions of Toyota. Oh, look at this. It's the same story every time you look around. It's these older vehicles. So it's just interesting to see what people choose to drive. Here is the Ram Rebel that I purchased, and you'll notice things, you know, this obviously it has a 1-inch lift. It's a full-size truck, and so it's a little bit different than a lot of the Toyotas we just looked at, but you'll see just different elements. Like here, this has a complete cover here. There's no exposed intercoolers here, and it's a little bit smaller spots for the rocks to get through or not get through. You'll still see the problems. You're still going to have these problems with all these vehicles where you've got these radar systems and all these sensors. They're all going to have the same problems. You get them caked with bugs and things, they're going to behave the same way. This has tow hooks. The Tundras don't come with tow hooks. And metal bumpers, steel bumpers. Then of course underneath this does have an off-road package. Skid plates here. You get skid plates really all the way down the backside of this truck. So you'll see different design elements and things like that where it just feels more solid on a truck like this. And then of course, when you look at the interior on this just feels super solid. Everything feels really rigid. There's just nothing in it that feels like it's lacking quality. And this is, you know, this is a Ram. This is Stellantis. Everybody kind of makes fun of them, but really you kind of get a lot of value for the money. It's just the reliability factor that everybody worries about. And the same thing goes for even something as simple as these headlights. When you push in on them, you know, they don't feel really super flexible. And when you go push in on some of these newer Toyotas, I've felt the headlights on them, and I've seen guys online with holes in their headlights just from rocks kicking up on the road. Just another cost-cutting measure that I see from Toyota. What do I think about Toyota overall? I still think Toyota has good design elements. I like the 4Runners, the Tacomas, the RAV4s, the Camrys. I still like a lot of their vehicles. I think they can potentially be very reliable. I like their transmissions. I like the design of a lot of their engines. I even like the design of the Tundra engine if it didn't have all those blunders. But we'll see where Toyota goes. I hope they can shore up some of the issues like these things where, you know, in the Ram, you know, we've got a really good tactile feel, knobs in here. Everything feels just super solid. It doesn't feel like it's just gonna fall apart. All the interior functions just everything feels super high quality. I hope that we start to see that again from Toyota, even if it's just hard plastics. Make the hard plastics last, Toyota. You can do it. We've seen you do it before. That's one thing that I think people don't realize about Toyota is they've always been kind of the hard plastic, reliable, don't make things super soft and make it last. That's all people want. They just want it to last. They don't want to see engines popping, and they want to see, you know, their seats and volume knobs lasting and moonroofs lasting more than a couple years. I think if Toyota can get back on track with all of that, they'll be in business. Anyway, thanks for watching. Till next time.